Inspire Talks. Pranam Mantra. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharine. We were discussing what Swamiji discussed on July 3. And in the previous talk, we had stopped at a very interesting point where Swamiji is talking pure Vedanta, where he says, we divide ourselves into two. This is one of those phenomenal things that Swamiji says, because when you read Upanishads or when you listen to these talks on Vedanta by various teachers, they sound good. And it is really good to read these things. But when you hear the same thing from Swami Vivekananda himself, suddenly you realize how true these are. This must be truth. And unlike Swamiji, we do not find in any of our scriptures such truths spoken so clearly, so vividly. If you are really interested in understanding what Swamiji is trying to say, pause for a minute and just try to think. I or you, dear listeners, we have divided ourselves into two. One is God, and there is this universe. And I am part of that universe, looking at God with awe. We had discussed this, and the second last sentence there is, when we know that we are one with God, that we and He are friends. We are friends. In the Vedas, we come across quite a few mantras where where God is treated as friend. God is treated in the Vedas as father, mother, benefactor, teacher, many different ways. He is also treated as a friend. And later on in Bhagavatam, in these Krishna stories, we come across those village boys, cowherd boys, who had divine friendship with Sri Krishna. And there was Sudama also, who had divine friendship with Sri Krishna. Says, so long as you hold yourself separated by hair's breadth, by hair's breadth from this eternal one, fear cannot go. We had discussed this, we had explained this. So we move on and we come to never ask that foolish question, what good will it do to the world? Let the world go, love and ask nothing, love and look for nothing further. Here, no, some years ago maybe, there was somebody had sent me a question that, okay, Buddha got enlightenment. So how did it help people in Africa? Is it in these modern times when you find that because of internet, there is such an easy access to information and there is such an easy access to dissemination of misinformation. Such a strange combination. No? You learn nothing. Your knowledge bank does not increase through this superhighway of information. You pick up a few information, a lot of misinformation, and you go on disseminating bagfuls of or dustbinfuls of misinformation. So here was this young lady, and she had asked this question, very stupid question, and I replied very sternly, very strongly. Now, how is Buddha responsible for doing something, say in Africa? As Swamiji will say, Buddha is not a person, it's a state. If you want to be one with that state, you will become blessed. Buddha is not responsible for this world. There are many times when some visitors, casual visitors, they come to Belur Math and often will say, "Why do you need such a big temple?" It's not even a big temple. It's a medium-sized temple. It's not a small temple, but it's a medium-sized temple. And my invariable reply is, "Why do you have such big malls? And why do you have such big this cinema halls? And why do you have so many railway trains? And why do you have so many buses? And why do you have so many aeroplanes?" Naturally, they will answer, "It serves the public." So, do you mean to say that these temples do not serve the public? Stupid questions. And in what way? Suppose I'm a monk, and sometimes I call them freelance talkers. When we travel by train or bus or plane, sometimes people will come sit by you and they will start discussing about my life or life of a monk. And they'll say, what are you doing for the society? I invariably say, I didn't get married, and that was a great service to the society. At least I did not increase the population, and I did not increase the burden of mouths to be fed on the country. What more do you want? Isn't that enough? Now, how is a monk responsible to the world? In what way? I am not taking anything from the this world. I am not taking anything. Bare minimum, and the bare minimum that I take, I return many folds. Now, these are the problems of shallow minds, or you can say these freelance talkers. They just say anything. And they have been living with such thoughts for so long that to them, these thoughts appear to be so true, so absolutely true. However, when you go to deeper philosophies, deeper outlooks, you'll find that there have been thinkers and there have been philosophers who try to find utility in everything. So there was Mr. Huxley. He used to try to find utility in everything. And even William James, who was such a great philosopher, or at least he was a thinker, and he was a combination of philosophy and psychology. He has written quite a few books, and he has given lots of new terms to both to psychology and English language, like second wind and all. Those words have come from William James, and he came up with a new term, pragmatism, which is a very popular term nowadays. Pragmatism, normally we tend to confuse pragmatism with practicality, but William James's pragmatism was more to do with wealth. Whatever you do, does it translate into wealth? If it does, then it is useful. If it's not, then it's not useful. So, like that, these Americans, they are basically worshippers of gold. There are some pockets where you do find people who are into higher levels of Christian religion, that too, not Vedanta or not of that high level Christian religion. There are pockets. But in general, they are hopelessly materialistic. Now, the disciples that Swamiji had with him at Thousand Island Park, those people had those ideas. And even in religion, they would try to find utility and how it is going to serve the world. Well, it's a simple thing. Do you keep on asking your father, your grandfather, or anybody in the society how those people have been useful to the society? You don't. Sometimes people ask me, "Why did you become a monk?" I invariably reply. My replies are at times curt. I say, "Did you ever ask your father why did he marry?" Now, if you did not ask your father why he got married, then why ask me why he became a monk? These are stupid questions because they think that getting married is a very normal thing. But why should it be a normal thing? You are born alone, you will die alone, you stay alone most of your time, then why get married? Being a monk is a natural thing. Getting married is an unnatural thing. Problem is that people are shallow, and worse, in case they find they come across while through discussions or through thinking, they come up with some thought and they think that that thought is the ultimate truth. Swamiji is for core spirituality, pure spirituality. And here he is not talking to the public. Of course, when Swamiji talked to the public, even there he did not mince words. His words were all free and absolutely true. He was never politically correct, never. If you go through his works, even superficially, not carefully, you don't have to be very careful about it. Even if you are just superficial about it, you will see that Swamiji was never politically correct. He was brutally honest and fiercely free. The fierceness in freedom, and freedom that came from spirituality and percolated down at every level, can be felt through each of his words. And his brutality in honesty was absolutely so brutal in honesty that that brutality springs from every page of Swamiji's works. Now, more importantly, he was talking to a close group of devotees, disciples, who needed to be given absolutely the raw product. It is said that we have read in books that when when devotees used to come to Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar, he used to talk to them, and he used to go on talking normally and naturally about God and everything. But when any of his special disciples, who later on became monks, they used to come, he would first look out to see that no outsider was present. Then he would close the door, and then he would go on pouring his heart out. The core spirituality, pure, which is the absolutely pure, no dilution there. And this is what Swamiji says. Never ask that foolish question, what good will it do to the world? Let the world go. See, if you go and tell this in public, Swami Vivekananda said, let the world go. And you will say that why? Swami Vivekananda talked about serving the country, serving India. Yes, he's talking about the same thing. He asks people of India to serve the nation so that they can grow in spirituality and finally they can give up the world. The goal of life is not to serve the nation. The goal of life is not to serve the humanity. The goal of life is not to do good to others. These are means. These are mere means to reach that level where you can say, let the world go. When Jesus was at the peak of his teachings, one person came and said, I'll come and join you. Somebody had died back home. And Jesus beautifully says, let the dead bury its dead. Don't worry, let the world go. Unless you reach that level where you say, let the world go. All these people, where there are tears of widows and orphans' cries, they do not matter. You want one and only one thing. See, these things may sound very cruel, very harsh. But I often think of a very interesting situation. Very interesting situation. Those of you who are even a little accustomed to our Ramakrishna mission, you would know about the biography of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna came to Dakshineshwar temple in 1853 and he took up charge as a priest there, and soon after he immersed himself in the sadhana of Mother Kali. Fortunately, he had his nephew from sister's side, Hridayaram, who was taking care of Sri Ramakrishna. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for Sri Ramakrishna to survive. Now, generally, the saints and sages who go into deeper sadhana, they need to be taken care of. People have to take their care. If they don't, these people cannot survive. Now, imagine those of you who have been to Kolkata or those who are from Kolkata would know that Barakpur is not very far from Dakshineshwar, maybe 10-15 minutes bus drive, or not more than that. And that is where Mangal Pandey revolted in 1857. It all started from Barakpur. And then slowly it spread. And then there was famous first war of independence or whatever you call in 1857 starting from Meerut. It all started here. And no, there was a turmoil and turmoil. And who knows, Sri Ramakrishna might have come to know of the problems that were going on just near hand and which was ultimately to change the course of India's history. We don't find any reaction from Sri Ramakrishna. And we don't even know if somebody informed him that problems have erupted throughout the country. There is no reason why people at Dakshineshwar would not have known. Momentous, 1857. There is no mention of it. And how would have Sri Ramakrishna reacted to that? And imagine these political pundits, if they were there, and if Sri Ramakrishna was famous, they would have, by then, they would have definitely asked, what is your opinion about this revolution? And just imagine what would have been the reaction of Sri Ramakrishna. Or go back to 15th, 16th century when we had Mirabai and Tulsidas and Surdas and Kabir Das. And there was that our emperors like Babar and Akbar, they were at their peak and lots of things were happening. There was Sher Shah in Bihar, Sasaram. And the armies of Pathans and Mughals and Mongols fighting and blood flowing all around. And what was Mirabai doing? Singing Mere To Girdhar Gopal. Lost in her own world. Same with Tulsidas, same with Surdas. How they would have looked at these affairs with sadness, no doubt, but without getting involved. So when a monk who is truly into sadhana, how would he look at the affairs of the world where there are tears and wails? He'll feel sad. But neither he can afford to get involved, nor he has the wherewithals, nor will he ever. Even mentally he won't. So Swamiji says, love and ask nothing. Love and look for nothing further. When a mom loves her baby who is hardly maybe 3-4 months old, she doesn't want anything more. She doesn't ask for anything more. She is absorbed in the love of her baby. So if lots of things are happening around her in the society, in the country, she won't pay any attention to those things. Exactly like that. A person who is into spirituality, who is into the way of God, he will never think of anything. And there is no way that he will think, what am I going to get out of it? And how society will be benefited, how people will be benefited. No way, nothing. And this is what Swamiji is saying. This is core spirituality. Let the dead bury its dead. Don't you worry. God has created this world. God will look after this world. If God is true, whose sadhana I am doing, then you have to believe, because by definition, God is one who created this universe. He will take care. So why should I bother? It is his world. He will know. Here I am in Kolkata. There are many kids, maybe 5-6 year old, and they have their parents. Their parents are looking after them. I cannot go looking after the lakhs of kids. See, even when I was working in different schools, we had limited capacity to to take these students to admit them. No, we cannot be responsible for all the kids that are there in the state, in the country. Their parents are there, they will take care. Government is there, the society is there. They are responsible for it. God is responsible for this world. God will take care. Why should I bother? And why should I ask God for that? Love and forget the isms. Isms mean religion. The sects. Love. Go all out. Drink the cup of love and become mad. Say, thine, O thine forever, O Lord, and plunge in, forgetting all else. The very idea of God is love. Those of you who have been listening to our talks intently for quite some time would know that God is pure existence, God is pure knowledge, and God is pure love. The little love that we see in this world, in whatever form, it is just faded a reflection of that love. The goal of spiritual life, the goal of all sadhana, the goal of all spiritual masters and all monks is one and only one, and it is to be established in that love. Once you are established in that love, nothing else matters. You don't care for the world. You don't care for anybody. You know that Lord is the master, God is the master. He will take care. Why bother? You become one with that love. Here it's not about loving God. Here it is about becoming one with God, the love. That means you yourself turn into love. There is no duality left. You become one with love. Swamiji will be explaining it further. This is one of those very beautiful statements by Swamiji. Seeing a cat loving her kittens, stand and pray. This is practical Vedanta. Those of you who have heard of this sentence, what is practical Vedanta? This is practical Vedanta. You know, once I had a very interesting encounter. Here at this university where I stay, we have two big ponds, and there are some water snakes. And once in a while, those snakes come out, and they're different sizes, larger ones, also smaller ones. And they're water snakes, and they're harmless, non poisonous ones. So one day it was evening time, and we have gatekeepers, and gatekeeper slightly horrified, terrified, and he said, Swamiji, just now I saw one snake with snakelets, small snakes moving around. So there was mother snake, and there were 4 or 5 maybe small snakes. So I laughed and I said, Mother must be taking them around to show the place where all to go. That was a funny way of saying about a snake, because snakes don't behave that way. But when you really want to feel Vedanta, when you want to know what spirituality truly means, you want to know how God is love. Then when you see a cat loving her kittens, you know that it is pure love. And you know that God is expressing through that love. I personally, this is pretty personal and you may not agree. We rarely go out. But long ago, there were occasions when I saw newlywed ones trying to hold each other's hands clandestinely so that nobody sees. And I used to feel true joy. See, love is expressing. I told it to someone, he said it's shamelessness. Now, there is a different Your perception may vary. You may look at things differently. Yes, it can degenerate to shamelessness. But great sages will not see shamelessness to them. That will also be expression of love only. However, for us, wherever you find pure love, a wife caring for her husband, a sister caring for her brother, brother caring for his sister, pure love. And even if there are two lovers, nothing wrong with it, unless their acts are obscene. Because that leaves a bad image to the society, and it leaves very bad impression the young minds. Swamiji says, stand and pray. Seeing pure love. And this pure love is manifestation of God. God is manifesting there. God has become manifest there. Literally believe this. It's not about believing, it's the truth. Wherever you find any kind of affection, particular affection, where there is no possessiveness, where there is giving. See, generally, male female relationship is based on give and take or simply take. But if you find true affection, genuine affection, true affection, know that know that it is God Himself manifesting there. Oh, these are very exalted thoughts. And those of you who have not studied inspired talks probably would have never heard of such things. And you may, this being your first exposure to such grand truths, you may find it slightly unacceptable or too heavy for you. But one has to begin someday, somewhere. A beginning has to be made. And this is that beginning. Wherever you see knowledge, wherever you see knowledge, you know that God being knowledge, it is manifestation of God. Where you find creativity, God alone creates. So where you find creativity, know that is God Himself manifesting through that. Once this person who is into this creative talent, once that person reaches that height where his mind becomes one with creation, one what he or she creates, he will know God in that aspect, God in the aspect of creation. And that's why those of you who are familiar with our Indian traditions, you will see that Indian tradition believe that one can attain God or worship God through dance, through music, through poetry. Swamiji at other places, there is nothing secular in India, mind it. Nothing secular. So this dichotomy, a Cartesian divide where there is God and there is this world, this is sacred and this is secular, this is spiritual, and there is nothing secular in India. Secular, not in the sense of what we have in politics and constitution, but in the sense that this belongs to the world and not to God. In India, everything belongs to God. So when we say that India is a secular country, it's an oxymoron. Oxymoron because in India there is nothing secular. In India, everything is divine. Everything is divine. But it is not church. The word secular itself is opposed to church. Now, India doesn't believe in any church. Even Swamiji will explain this. India believes everything is divine. So the constitution makers, when they were writing the constitution, it was the expression of concern, it was the expression of wisdom. Wisdom is God, and concern is God. The constitution that talks about secularism, that itself is manifestation of divine, that itself is manifestation of God. Mind it, we are not talking poetry. We are not using flowery words. We are just narrating truth. Repeat, I am thine, I am thine, for we can see God everywhere. Do not seek for him, just see him. Now, again, this is a very, very, very powerful statement. See, actually, Inspired Talks book is just like that. It's a book of spiritual truths, and hence it's a book of spiritual quotations. Do not seek for him, just see him. Do not see God, just see him. If you want, you can see everywhere. Now, mind it, there is this famous Upanishad, and those of you who are interested can watch this Ishavasya Upanishad, Isha Upanishad in English on YouTube. And the first mantra itself says Ishavasyam idam sarvam. You should look at everything as expression of divine. But Swamiji is not talking about that. It's not about sadhana. It's the truth. And actually, in Upanishad also, when they are talking, what they are stating is basically this is the truth. And because this is the truth, you should see it this way. You should learn to see things the way they are. You don't have to be perceptive. You just need to be real. Just be what it is. When you say that, when people say that they want to be scientific and they want to be rational, be rational. Learn to see truth the way it is. And if you want to see truth as truth, know that everything is divine. When you find a kid learning ABCD, to learning to write ABCD or to read aloud ABCD, it's a manifestation of divine, it's God Himself, because God is getting expressed there as knowledge. And as Swamiji said, when you find kitten or tigress or lioness or whatever it is, loving its kitten, know that God is manifest there. You see a female bitch, female dog, female badge dog feeding its puppies. Know that God is manifested there. And India took it to very high level and said, there was this great sage Kashyap. He had a wife named Sarma. And from her came out all these dogs and wolves and all. So even dogs and wolves, in Indian tradition, even dogs and wolves and snakes and vultures, all these things have divine origin. These are not flights of fancy. These are just to impress this idea in our mind that nothing is secular here. Everything is divine, divine, divine. Learn to see it. Practice it day and night and be one with it. Your goal is not to seek for him. Don't seek. Remove the letter K. See him. Now, there's a very popular saying, God is within you. God, why should God be within you? God is everywhere. You just need to open your inner eyes. Idea being, you need to have that clear understanding. Once your understanding is clear, you will not see anything as sin. You will not see anything as wrong. If you want to be happy, in general, most times I am very happy, and many have pointed this at me. Why? Because I find reasons to be happy, and you see a flower bloom, and you know that God is manifesting through that creation. There is this book, Russian spiritual book, Philokalia, and there in Philokalia, and then there was Brother Lawrence, Practice of Presence of God, where he talks about these things. So it's not about practice, it's a truth. It is a truth. It's the Lord Himself. If you want, you can see the manifestation of God everywhere. Go watch an aquarium. If you have an aquarium in your house or with some friend of yours, just go and watch how those fish are frolicking. It's the kinetic aspect of God. It's a dynamic aspect of God. This is creation. And exactly this is what was portrayed in the dance of Nataraj, where Nataraj is dancing. And Nataraj is dancing on the prostrate lying body of a demon, Apasmara. That is ignorance. Go stand up on ignorance. Go stand up on ignorance and feel the divine dance. Whatever it is, if you want, you can see it anywhere. Just try it for 5 minutes. Just look around. And you will see that you don't have to seek for God. You can see God. May the Lord ever keep you alive, light of the world, soul of the universe. So now Swamiji is explaining, okay, fine, if it be so, if it is so, then why do we have to worship, say, Jesus? Why do we have to worship Buddha? Why do we have to worship, say, Sri Ramakrishna or Krishna or Rama? The absolute cannot be worshipped. You see, there are religions, they go on talking about formless and absolute and this and that, and claiming that their scripture, their religious book says, but it's a very simple thing. How can you worship absolute? Is it possible? Just not possible. How will you worship? How can you worship? Because worship, worship automatically means duality. You cannot have worship without duality. The worshipper has to be there, and the worshipped has to be there, and the act of worship has to be there. If you want to pray, even there, the person who is praying and the person towards whom the prayer is being made, the duality will be there, the act of prayer will be there. If you want to meditate, supposing you are sitting for meditation, how can you meditate on the absolute? Because the meditator will be different and the object of meditation will be different. There will be duality. Where is the absolute? You cannot worship absolute. You cannot serve absolute, nor can you meditate on the absolute. Just not possible. As I said, oxymoron. It's an oxymoron. You cannot. And that is why, most of these religions have such inner fallacies. They suffer from such inner contradictions that they become extremely intolerant. Because nobody likes to be told about their faults. So we must worship a manifestation, such a one as has our nature. Now, this is a very interesting thing, and this is what Swamiji was a rishi coming from Vedic times, and he once had a vision on the banks of Indus, where an ancient sage was chanting one of the mantras and asked Swami Vivekananda to recite along with him, and everything changed for Swamiji after that. And then he realized that the national cadence of India is the Vedas. And later he told Sister Nivedita that Shankaracharya must have had a vision like that. So, Swamiji being a rishi, it is within his wisdom, it is within his power, and it is within his authority to explain the complicated. Things that are extremely subtle, he can explain. He has the authority. And see, this incarnation and this concept of God, how beautifully he puts it. The absolute, we need to be one with the absolute, but we cannot be one with the absolute till we worship. But you cannot worship the absolute. So what do? He says, we must worship a manifestation. Absolute is absolute, but there can be manifestation because this world is real to us. Because this world is real, there is manifestation. And that such a one as has our nature. So we would like to worship the manifestation which has our nature. This is again a very, very, very interesting thing. This is where Hinduism stands completely apart and head and shoulder and everything above every other religion. When Swamiji says, such a one as has our nature, what is your nature? And what is his nature? What is her nature? What is my nature? Depending on what nature I have, depending on what nature you have, depending on what nature that person has, the ideal and object of worship will change. Someone who is devoted to, say, some art, some knowledge, they will worship Mother Saraswati. Because Mother Saraswati has that manifestation where the absolute is getting manifested as a human being, because the form of goddess is just like human being. And she represents knowledge. At the same time, those who are into dancing, they may worship Nataraj or they may worship Saraswati, because Saraswati is ultimately the goddess of all knowledge, all wisdom. Those who worship power, those who want power, they will automatically worship Mahavir Hanuman. When you think of Mahavir Hanuman, because when Sri Ramchandra was the master of Mahavir Hanuman, and Sri Ramchandra was so powerful that Mahavir Hanuman cowered before him. Even then, to us, Sri Ramchandra was all powerful, but even then, Mahavir Hanuman he represents strength. Then when it comes to Lord Shiva, you find expression of this expression, that expression. So it's not only that we have different gods. Even as far as different gods are concerned, we have their different aspects which we worship. Shiva is worshipped by the householders. Shiva is also worshipped by the sannyasis. Shiva is worshipped for his strength. He is also worshipped for his calmness. He is worshipped for his anger. He could burn down the entire universe just by opening his third eye. And he's also the one who easily gets pleased. Amazing personality. I, you, he, she will worship, as Swamiji says, such a one as has our nature. So Sri Ramakrishna cannot be worshipped by all. No. Sri Ramakrishna can be worshipped only by those who have some similarity in nature. Sri Ramakrishna is not meant for all. But of course, Sri Ramakrishna's personality is so multifaceted that practically most of humanity can be accommodated there. However, that condition remains. Jesus had our nature, he became the Christ. So can we, and so must we. Again, this is speciality of avatar, or God manifested on this earth. Jesus became Christ. He was Jesus, he was man, he was born man, and he became Christ. And once he became Christ, he is one with God. So now it does not matter whether he was born God or he became God, it does not matter. God is God. Same with Buddha. He was born Siddhartha and became Buddha. It was a state. And once he reached that state, now it does not matter whether he had imperfection when he was born or he was perfect when he was born. It just does not matter. They are just matters of debate. If you if you read any history book that deals with religion, not history of religions, but general history book, they will try to explain religion coming from this thing and that thing, and how Egyptians had some kind of religion and how that thing ultimately affected the Israelites and things like that. These are not important things for us. Those of you who might have read my book, The World of Religions, there I very clearly explained how religions are born. It's born when a person apparently ordinary, apparently, maybe showing some glimmers of speciality, he reaches that state where he becomes one with God, one with truth. Suddenly everything changes for the world. Not that he intends to change the world, not that he intends to teach the world. It comes automatically. And he represents that state. Lord Christ, he represents a state. Lord Buddha, he represents a state. Shiva, he represents a state. Sri Ramakrishna, he represents a state. The goal is not to end up worshipping them. The goal is to be one with them. Find out what qualities appeal you as far as their personalities are concerned. And then try to be one with that. Be one with that. Christ and Buddha were the names of a state to be attained. Jesus and Gautama were the persons to manifest it. So there is a state, God being infinite, his qualities are infinite. It's not just knowledge, it's not just love. He has infinite qualities. Sakala Guna Nidhanam, the Sanskrit expression is the repository of all qualities. So Christ represents certain qualities. It's a state. Same with Buddha, same with Swami Vivekananda. So the goal is not to worship them. Goal is, when we say be one with them, we are making light of the thing. The goal is to be one with that state. Buddha is not a person, Buddha is a state. Be one with that. That is the goal of spirituality. And then Swamiji says, Jesus and Gautama were the persons to manifest it. Mother is the first and highest manifestation. Next, the Christ and Buddhas. This again, he goes back to Shakti worship, because if you might remember, earlier discussion was on Shakti worship, where Swami is talking about God, the power. So when God manifests his power, it is a universal power, and that God himself appears through that power, and that is when we have this personal God and we have these avatars. So in that sense, Swamiji is saying, it's not only about Christ and Buddha, it's about every incarnation. We make our own environment and we strike the fetters off. See, both ways, we create our own bondages and we create our own freedom. And that is why, given the option, not because you have been born in a religion, if you look at yourself, you will see that even though you might be born in a particular religion, you have inclination towards certain ideals of other religions. It is because it is there within you. We create our own environments. And we strike the fetters. We bound ourselves and we also unbound ourselves. The Atman is the fearless. Atman, it's beyond everything. It's beyond any manifestation, it's beyond any power, it's beyond everything. When we pray to a God outside, it is good, only we do not know what we do. So, prayer is important, no doubt, prayer is important. But we actually do not know what we are doing, because ultimately, it is we ourselves who has become God. It is we Swami says, we divide ourselves into two to love God. So when we worship, we forget how it came to be in the first place. When we know the self, we understand. Only when you have known the self. No, very often people will ask us questions, this and that. And generally, these questions are not meant for clarification, but to attack us. Generally, I say that, look, you practice this, you reach that level, and then you be an acharya yourself, and then you can say that this is not correct. Till then, you have no right to say. Unless you follow a system, very often you will see people who claim themselves to be creative, they are plain lazy in some way. India never lacked creativity, but India had made a very clear condition. First, you grow within a system, you master the entire system, and then if you want, you can step outside. Once you step outside, that will become the new system. If you move around, if you know some of these lazy persons who are armchair philosophers and armchair preachers and armchair commentators on every subject, they're too lazy to do anything. They never had any achievements. And if they had achievements in a particular field, and yet they will go on bragging and they will go on sermonizing on any topic they want, they like. But India doesn't permit that. When it comes to science, somebody comes up with some idea and says that, well, oh, throw away all physics. And what I am saying is correct. No one is going to listen to him. Same with religion, and they don't apply this rule to religion. If you want to say something about religion, if you want to say that, well, all these things are wrong, all these things are hocus pocus, and all these things are imagination, first you master the entire thing, be one with it, and then you say that, well, I realize this is wrong. And then people will follow. The power that you have acquired through meditation, the power that you have acquired through your knowledge, and the power that you have acquired through your hard work, that itself will create enough psychic force within you, enough psychic power within you to make others bow down before you. You know, the famous story of Lord Buddha, when he had got realization under the Bodhi tree, he started walking towards from Gaya to Varanasi. And then on way he met 5 of his old mates. And they said, he's Siddhartha, and we are not going to talk to him. But when the Lord approached them, they could not move. They fell down at his feet. That is the power of knowledge. That is the power of love. So whether worship is important, whether idol worship is important, whether personal gods are true, whether Hinduism is true, and all these things, if you want to disprove, first be one with it, outgrow it, and then you say all these things are wrong. Actually, you will say all these things are wrong, but then you will also realize that for ordinary people, these are very important. Once you are one with Atman, you will realize that everything that is there in duality, everything that has the nature of duality, is actually false. But you will also learn not to upset the understanding of others. You will talk about that truth only to the chosen few, to the limited few. The highest expression of love is unification. Swamiji comes back. It becomes one. It's unification, one. If you see any distinction, and if you are distinguishing people from this and that, if you look at the mantras of the Vedas, they're trying to unify. Even when the sage who gave us famous Purusha Suktam, where he says that Brahmins came out of the mouth and Shudras from the feet. He's not dividing. He's trying to unify. The division comes from the society. Division doesn't come from the Vedas. The Vedas is trying that, no, see, there is unification. There is no one alien. Everyone belongs to God. In any case, God doesn't have a head and God doesn't have a feet. God is pure consciousness. But people will not understand. They will go on quarreling over this. They say that religion is a divisive force. No, religion may be divisive force. Maybe other religions, not Hinduism. Hinduism is a religion of inclusiveness. The Vedas are inclusive at every stage. They are saying these things when they are talking about this truth. They are saying, look, everything. We have some of these talks on the Vedas in English. If you just go through them, you will realize how they are trying to unify. And that unification is not the unification that we have, say, from some religion or from some political thought, where they are trying to force some kind of unity, some kind of umbrella. They make that umbrella body. No, it's not. They say this is the fundamental truth. Swamiji quotes from a Persian Sufi poem. There was a time when I was a woman and he was a man. This is one of those mystic poems where God is being adored, God is being worshipped as love. Still, love grew until there was neither he nor I. Love grew, and there was neither he nor I. I was no more a woman, nor was God a he, male. Only I remember faintly there was a time when there were two, but love came between and made them one. The Sufi saint is saying, I faintly remember, faintly, the distinction, the duality has receded so far in the past that this sage doesn't even remember that and says, I faintly remember. Kabir Das was a great sage poet, and he wrote beautiful couplets talking about society, talking about God. And he beautifully says that there was a time when I was there and God was not there. Now, in that lane, it's a narrow lane, God is there, I am not there. This lane of love, expression is Prem Gali. Prem Gali. Lane of love, lane of love. This lane of love is so narrow, you cannot have two there. When they say one, actually there is oneness. You have become one with the object of your love. Only love remains. When Jesus talks about you cannot serve God and mammon, as two swords cannot be kept in the same scabbard, just like that. See, these things are not poetry. A normal person will consider these to be poetry and oh, what a beautiful, how majestic, what beauty. No, they don't have any beauty. They're just plain truth that you realize in the depths of your sadhana. When you go deep into meditation, when you go deep into realization, and when you have that fulfillment, you suddenly realize that not only that it has become one, the duality has gone so far back that you just faintly remember that there was some kind of duality. So let's stop here because again the next topic begins, which requires time, thinking, and attention. Thank you so much for listening to this talk.